Well, good morning, everyone. I know that most of the day today is going to be about companies and the trends of investments and the kind of things you want to look at as some of the next things. What I wanted to do today is give you a broader perspective, a little bit, and talk about what's happening around the world. I'm just coming with meetings with ministers and governments in two countries in Europe. And I know that there's a lot of discussions about conflicts as they express themselves with battleships in the Gulf, threats, and different aspects that you're seeing and people are talking about. But what you're not seeing, and a lot of people are not talking about, is some of the real conflicts that are going on behind the scenes, sometimes with government-sponsored attacks. And in addition to what we are all doing to protect the companies, the banks, the airlines, the individuals, there's also a lot going on. And the reason it's relevant for all of us as cyber players in the civilian space is that when it comes to governments, they are protecting themselves very well in terms of their security organizations. But the most vulnerable aspects today are actually not the security organizations, but the civilian domains in its relevant places of entry. So I don't want to scare you, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what's going on. And the cyber threat is here, and it's here in a big way. And I want to give a few examples and maybe give a taste of some of the things that have been happening lately. I know that some of it has been reported, and perhaps many of the things were still not. What we're talking about is a situation where if we focused on the civilian domain, because we said that the security forces know how to protect themselves, then you have pharma, you have banking, you have transportation, you have airlines, you have utilities. And one of the reasons that we will talk about our partnership with the city of New York and why New York is so mission critical, because cities today need to be able to gather themselves and protect each one of these domains. And it's not just about the government. It's about the private sector setting standards of working together. Homeland Security in the United States has set the way, which was very different than the FBI and in some of the other more security-driven organizations, by allowing people to get together and to set the standard and to be able, with the right kind of legislation that passed in New York, to share information by keeping yourself anonymous. But if one worm or one Trojan horse goes into a bank in the Netherlands, it knows no boundaries before it comes to the bank in New York. So if we have the ability to intercept it, detect it, understand it, we will often be able to intercept it if we have the circle of trust of cooperation in a big way. If you take the British airline control systems, I know that a lot of times people think about physical things, but there was a threat not so long ago. This is a system that has about 2,400,000 flights a year, and there's a lot of issues when planes fly. And one of these group of hackers didn't really try to do anything to blow anything up, but all they wanted to do is to change a few coordinates with a virus in the flight direction. And what that would have cost over Europe is a major havoc, because these flights, as you know, it's a close call the way it is today without the interference of the systems. One example. Let me ask you, how many civilian nuclear facilities there are around Europe? Give me a number. Nice. Yeah. Close. It's actually 65. And I don't know if you know this, but some of these facilities are old. and some of these facilities are very vulnerable. And I know that some of the Israeli groups or some other groups, in order to express the vulnerability of some of these facilities, they basically turned down the lights for these guys and the air conditioning, and these guys were saying, oh, so how did you do that? And I think that working together on these kind of aspects is critical. Dragonfly. We talked about Russian intervention in certain elections and things like that. But some of these things are state-sponsored, and some of these things are with groups that are not state-sponsored, but sometimes are just as strong. We were about to have what was potentially going to be the cyber plague in Europe. Essentially, they hacked almost all the pharmaceutical companies, and they had two options. One was to change the makeup of the drugs by a few milligrams when you're actually manufacturing. And I know there's companies here who are protecting the manufacturing facilities. The other option was just to steal the IP. Thank God they were greedy, and they stole the IP. But this was a problem. Some people think that cybersecurity is sort of in the virtual domain, but it doesn't touch the physical domain. There's a very famous company in Germany that became famous because of a certain affair. It's called ThyssenKrupp. They sell submarines and elevators and all kinds of things. In one of their facilities, and in Israel, well, people don't get the joke, then they don't know about what's going on, but it's okay. You still don't get the joke. Okay, ThyssenKrupp was the company that, let's put it this way, when Greece was going bankrupt, they still bought 2 additional submarines for huge amounts of money, and the defense minister went to jail for 25 years for corruption. Same thing happened in South Africa, and there are rumors that Israel got a bunch more submarines than it actually needed, and that's why it's funny. But in ThyssenKrupp, they actually were able to play with a thermostat in the furnace in a major facility. And what happened, they didn't blow anything up. The thermostat didn't work. And so the heat continued, and there was one of the biggest blow-ups that was physical, that was caused by a cyber attack. So anybody who's talking about manufacturing and facilities, you need to understand that this could be real. Some people are trying to cause harm. Some people just want to derail the production process. The same strategy was used in Aramco at the end of last year. And what they did there, Aramco is the biggest refinery and the biggest facility for oil production. What they did there is they played with a thermostat of the cooling system, and it was so close to have caused one of the biggest explosions. And all that happened this time not by young hackers out of their garage, but the same guys that are now threatening the US on having major battleship wars are already very busy sponsoring a variety of attacks. And the Iranian regime has 11 commercial companies. It's not the guns, it's not the tanks, it's not some of the other facilities, it's this computer strategy, which looks a lot more benign, but could be very, very harmful, and it's happening everywhere. And there are different organizations, which are commercial organizations, which are attacking different states and different mission-critical facilities. Each one of them has a different name. Oil rig is the most famous one, which actually was not only looking at Aramco, but actually was looking in the US. And I don't know if you know this, but major financial organizations in the United States and then in Europe were attacked by this organization in a way that was threatening to bring the financial trading systems down in a way that would have been devastated in a big way. And also there was actually an attempt around New York and upstate to play with some of the facilities of the Bauman Dam attack, which was prevented at the last moment. And people said it wasn't the Iranian government, but it was a company sponsored by the Iranian government. And whether they decided to go all the way or didn't, it was a big deal. So the other thing is democracy. Democratic states need to get their ass together, not only around the banking system and the transportation system and the utilities and the pharmaceutical companies. They also need to get their act together with respect to democracy. Democracy in Western elections is under brutal attack day in and day out. And some of the countries that are offending are actually countries we don't have democracy, and the countries that are suffering from some of these attacks are the democracies that we know very well. And I will give a few examples, and maybe some of it will be a little controversial, but so what? The pattern is very simple. There's an external actors that connect to internal actors, and they connect through some of the political motivation. And in the United States, I know you think you had free elections the last time that it happened, but actually there was a major unit, it's like 8,200 in Israel, but from another country, you can guess who it was, that actually set 465 web pages that were managed from outside the United States. Then suddenly, this guy from WikiLeaks, that's now being arrested and is being questioned about these things, was handed all this information about the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and of course the 30-something thousand emails of Hillary Clinton. Where did he get that? What was his means? How did he get a hold of it? It was probably done by a very sophisticated group of hackers, and the evidence showed that this is the pattern, because now we've uncovered the pattern was uncovered before. And then what you do is throughout the election process, there was a systematic process of leaking of information that was problematic. How much they turned the knob, how much it's flooded, it was really up to them. And the thing is that you took a lot of these problems, and some of these things were right. So these were real problems or real emails or real issues, but the level of intensity that was used was unbelievably flooding the network, and it determined the conversation during the election times. And it reached billions of messages, and it reached billions of pages, and at the time that was very problematic for the election. And fake news or fake information is a major issue. Brexit, England, same thing. 36 last hours, registration of the Brexit, where most of the young people actually register at the last days, because that's the way young people are, was shut down. You couldn't register. The level of traffic and information about the issues on the Brexit was totally taken over by, again, very strong group of technology organization that had the setup in order to do it. It happened, and it meddling with the voting infrastructure. It happened in Germany. It happened in France. The information is that the yellow vests, the people that are coming out on the street, the people who are motivating them behind them, a lot of it is coming from outside organizations. And in France, you have a law that you can't put anything in the media about the candidates in the last 36 hours before the elections. It was all taken by people that, the network was flooded. In Germany, there was one instance where there was information about a 13-year-old German girl that was raped by an immigrant. 100,000 people came out to the street for demonstrations. The right wing got 6 more seats, some of which were very specific people. Guess what? There was no rape. It was perception. There was no rape, and it affected the last hours of the elections in a big way. So when we say that we must act, it's not just acting about the infrastructure, the banks, it's acting about, so the next time you go to vote, you can be sure that the votes can go either way, but that countries, foreign countries are not intervening. And the idea, what we're saying, is that every country has its CERT, its Cyber Emergency Center. And it's all well, and it's all good, and some countries are better than operating it than others. But you need cooperative strategies, both within the vertical industries within a country, but also in the verticals between countries. And for that, you need what's called a circle of trust. The ability to have democratic states with like-minded values operate with each other in organizations that can cooperate across borders, because hackers don't know borders. Borders are something that was invented, but they don't really take it seriously, and the ability to share information. So in each one of these industries, and this needs to be between Europe, Israel, which is an important player, and of course the United States. And the circle of trust needs to include countries which abide by the values that we're trying to have in terms of protecting both the institutions, but also the privacy of the individual and their right for their integrity, which is also something that we need to watch. And we should work on together. And I know that I talked about strife or potential strife in the Middle East when I mentioned the Iranians. But one thing to know also is that there's actually cooperation between some of the more moderate states going on as well. Both Israel and a few Arab countries that are being attacked are actually working together and sharing information. And some of these things is sort of the basis for not only identifying your enemies, let's say in our region, but around the world, but also figuring out who are those who can be your allies. Countries don't need to work alone, and it's actually counterproductive to work alone. They could work together. In New York, together with EDC, and we have Nick here from EDC, what we're doing in the downtown area, it's Broadway, Grand, and Crosby. If we are on time, it would be July 1st. If we're a little less on time, until you get improvements to do anything here in this town, it takes a lot longer, like anywhere, I guess. It may be a week or two later, but there's going to be about 250 great young entrepreneurs, actually most of them that have come from Israel, but some of them from Europe as well, that now are choosing New York for their next cyber headquarters as they're thinking about the United States. What Nick and what EDC was able to do is actually rally the universities together. We're partners with CUNY, with Columbia University, with Cornell, with NYU. And I think the thing that we're trying to say is that we have great universities here, but like in Boston and like in Stanford or the West Coast, we want some of the technology and the initiatives from the university not only to stay within campus, but to come out to the streets of New York. And if we're If the West Coast is the technology hub of the US, what we're saying, New York can become the international hub, but it needs Israel as a partner. And what we're doing is we're going to be inviting you to come and celebrate with us. And there's going to be a great cafe downstairs, Breads, that you probably know. And it has great food, but a lot of young people, a lot of dynamic people. We have our partners here, Yoav Tsuya from JVP. We have Tali Rabin. We have Alex Dickman. We have Joy Marcus. We have Shana here, who's working with us as well. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help companies that are coming into the US. And I know that for many of you this is a no-brainer, but for foreign companies that are coming here, hiring the right people, making the mistakes together and then hiring again, having the right kind of financial strategy, because if you're going to grow, you need to be able to take money from institutional investors over time, and they need to see your corporate structure built in a certain manner, especially if you didn't start in the United States. For many of you, it's a no-brainer. For a company that's for the first time doing it, it's an issue. And then customers and interesting people to meet. So whether it's the CTO breakfast or whether it's the marketing breakfast of the people who are managing the companies, whether it's the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, the HBOs, or the different players in the media, in the financial sector, in the smart city, in healthcare, all of these organizations, it's not just about cyber, it's about AI, cyber, technology, and a variety of things that they need. It's often not so easy for the large players to meet the young players, and it's not so easy for the young players to meet the right people at the large organizations. So I think that what we will be trying to do and doing, and I think that where we could use your help, is meeting, convening, talking, sharing ideas, thinking about the next thing, and then maybe giving a sign, not just to Israeli entrepreneurs. I was just coming from the Netherlands, where there's great cyber cooperation and actually food tech cooperation between the US, the Netherlands, and Israel. It's countries in Europe as well. They're looking to build their next big companies. In order to do that, they now understand, I think, better than ever, that they need to come to North America if they're going to build a great company, not only in Europe, but also a great company around the world. And we're trying to say, New York is, the West Coast is great, but you have another option here on the East Coast in New York. This city is developing in a big way. And one of the things that we're trying to do also is identify the expatriate communities of every one of these nationalities and bring them to convene from time to time, because ideas have ways of spreading. All right, so there's 600 Israeli startups in New York, but there's also a lot of people from other nationalities. And we hope that we could work together not only in defending the infrastructures and the facilities, but also creating some of the big next companies in different ways that will show the world that we have a lot more ideas and we can help in different ways. Thank you very much, and good luck today.